All right, what's your thing you think you know, Abby?
All right, so kind of staying in the quarterback conversation, I feel like there's been a lot of debate about Jameis or DTR. Like, who should the Browns try to focus on? Obviously, for this moment in time, they're moving forward with Jameis as the starter. But part of me is a little bit more interested for them to maybe try some more DTR. I think. I don't know how much to put in all of these rumblings that have been coming out recently in the last, honestly, couple days about Jameis and like Kevin doesn't like him. The organization's sick of him. Like all of
We're
those
fed up.
conversations. Yeah,
Bo Bishop.
all of that is a
Yeah.
little interesting to be coming out right now. And it makes me think that even like regardless of what happens for the rest of the season, he's not going to be back next year. They're not looking at him as their bridge quarterback for, whatever situation comes. And I would think that maybe they would want to see a little bit more of DTR, what they could grow in him throughout the rest of the season, and then potentially have him as a backup in the future with whatever direction they try to go as a starter. Because I'm not sure if at this point they see him as a starter of the future, but could be potentially a consistent backup. So I personally, I think I'm more leaning towards that, but I feel like that's been kind of they're such different quarterbacks, so it's such a debate, and they serve such different purposes for this team.
Yeah, I wrote on Tuesday in the article version of Things I Think I Know that um, it makes sense to get a quick look at Winston for a couple weeks because you are seeing guys like Sam Darnold and Geno Smith have, revitalized careers around the NFL, right? And so get a look at him. But if you don't see anything that blows you away, I think there's plenty of time to see DTR this season. I think at the bye week, maybe you make that change and it's DTR the rest of the way because that's the evaluation you need to get, the more
Yeah.
important one, I think.
The only pushback I'm gonna give on that is there are DTR, and like I get he's been put in some tough situations so far in his pro career where he's kind of had to jump in there. But there have been too many moments I've seen DTR not be able to turn the page on like a bad play and it snowball into more, because that's exactly what happened. He got out there at the first, he was playing well, and
That
then
first
Cedric
throw was
Tillman,
a beautiful, perfect throw.
yeah, that
Getting it
first
out
throw,
quick.
the
Yeah.
RPO stuff, he was working through his progressions pretty well. And then Cedric Tillman sits for no reason over the ball route and causes an interception. And it just went downhill so quickly for DTR. And it's not just that it gets kind of bad, it gets bad to the point to where like you get that feeling of like you need to pull the kid right now because like he's melting down. And that's the one thing with DTR is like he has to prove that he has the temperament to be able to handle this, right? Because I think it feels like at times we've seen the moment be too big for him a little often. Now, he did have that moment in Pittsburgh where he did come back up to the moment. There was a lot of support on the sideline for him for that, though. And that's the thing with him is like, if he can't maintain the temperament to stay out there, then he can't stay out there, because then you're just putting everybody in a really bad situation. Because when he was confident and like it just didn't feel like he was unprepared in this game. I know he compared it to the Baltimore game. I was watching. I was like, nah, you
That
knew
Baltimore game.
exactly what you're doing. You were working through everything, and then you made the interception, and then you start to hesitate, right? Like you didn't want to rip here, and then you start patting and rolling out when you're not supposed to roll out and all that. And I think that's the stuff that DTR has to figure out. And I don't know if that's something that can be solved by just like sitting down for a couple of weeks. Like that's my main concern with them is, on top of like, yeah, he throws a flat football and sometimes it's not accurate downfield, but those are just football evaluations. But sometimes I think the moment can get too big for him. And when it gets too big, it gets way too big for him to the point to where he almost becomes unplayable. And you don't want to put your team in a situation, even though they did it for the first 4 weeks of the season, where you have an unplayable quarterback.
Yeah. First 7 weeks. The question there is, real quickly before we get to yours thing, Quincy, is so when they go back to DTR, because I think we all could probably agree at some point that's going to happen this season. I would think. When they go back to him, do you think they give the play calling back to Stefanski because of his demeanor?
I mean, by that point, they'll probably just figure it out. But I think you just kind of roll with what you have. If you're not getting, like, if we get 3 weeks from now, right after the bye week, and we're still getting the procedural penalties and all of that, you might walk out the bye week and Ken Dorsey just isn't here anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So, if they figure it out and they're not getting the procedural penalties, and Ken still knows who his personnel is. It's not like he's going to call like it's Jameis for DTR. And I think you would just want that going forward just for the end of the season, and then evaluate at the end of the season. But
Yeah.
I don't know how much like it feels like too. There's been this friction of what the front office wants at quarterback and what Kevin wants at quarterback. Pretty much his entire time here, right? Where it's like, okay, we're going to work with Baker, and then Baker wasn't what Kevin wanted, right? And then you bring in Deshaun, and now we're hearing that Deshaun isn't what Kevin wanted, right? And it's like, we got to figure out, what does Kevin actually want at quarterback? Because I'm not sure if DTR is exactly what Kevin wants, right? Because he doesn't really do a lot of the play action stuff that Kevin likes to do. And Kevin loves throwing deep post on play action and deep overs, and that's not a ball that DTR throws well. So I need Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski to really figure out what Kevin wants at quarterback, because it just doesn't seem like they've been successful at figuring that out at all. And I think it might be even Kevin that don't know what he wanted at quarterback too.
Yeah. He wants Joe Flacco, probably. That's about it.
Probably.
Yeah, he's got to figure out, like, what kind of guy in the West Coast, like, who Joe Flacco's they're not being developed anymore. Like, that is a dinosaur, right? Yeah. So it's like, what is the new version of what you're looking like, look like? Like, does it look like Shador? Does it play like more like Milroe or somebody like that? Yeah. Like, what is the skill set that he needs in order to be successful? Because I don't think they've had a clear vision of what that is, because it's so random, the skill sets they brought in at quarterback over the last 4 years.
Worst case scenario is that they end up still not being on the same page and draft another quarterback that doesn't fit what Kevin wants to do. So I agree with you. They're going to have to, like, really nail down what that looks like, and not just take someone because they're in the position to take, the highest ranked quarterback or whatever that is.
Yeah, because DTR has got to be the last time we have this conversation.
Right? Yeah. I can't do this again.
Yeah. All right, Quincy, what's your thing you think you know?
I think the Browns are going to play much better football down the stretch than they started right now. And I think the signs are there. We're even showing before the quarterback went down. The defense quietly the last 2 weeks played pretty well, right? Only gave up 14 points this week to Joe Burrow and all of them. They played pretty well throughout the Philadelphia game. I remember thinking, man, the defense is giving you a chance to win this game. Special teams, pretty much the reason that you lost this game. They gave up 11 points here, right? 7 points on the kick return, 3 points on the missed field goal, and an extra point here, which, by the way, Dustin Hopkins sliding on those charges right now, because they ran Cade York out of town over much less egregious stuff than what Dustin is doing. But he has the fortune of building up some goodwill with the season before, and he's missing these kicks when the team's already 4 games below water. So it just don't hit the same, right? But I think that this team's going to play a lot better football down the stretch, whether it's DTR or whether it's Jameis. When I saw DTR in there, I saw more of a focus. Like, I could see what they're going for offensively. With Jameis, I know what they're going to go for offensively. Like, it's not an identity in the sense that you do something so well that people know you for it, but it is an identity in the sense of, like, you're trying to achieve something on offense, which with the Watson offense this year, I just didn't know what they were trying to achieve and what they were trying to accomplish as a team while Watson was out there. Nick Chubb, right? He had to work through getting hit for the first time. I think the underrated part of him coming back is it's going to take him a couple of times bursting into the open field to get comfortable, because that's where he got injured, right? I know a lot of people are wondering, like, oh, he's going to be nervous about getting hit or all this. Like, nah, what's going to make him nervous is when he gets into the open field, because he got into the open field one time last week and you could just see him trying to like feel out the contact, and he kind of went down earlier than he should have because of it. So I think he's going to get comfortable, kind of shake off the rust a little bit, but athletically, he still looks like Nick Chubb. So I think he'll be back sooner than later. You're getting Wyatt Teller back. We talked about this team doesn't feel physical. Wyatt Teller makes you feel physical because he's probably the most physical offensive lineman that you have. Hopefully you can get Jed Wills back or some solution there at left tackle, James Hudson, whoever it needs to be. And because James Hudson's a pretty decent run blocker, at least on that side. And you're getting healthier on the offensive line. David Njoku is weeks back from that high ankle sprain. I think there's a lot of things to suggest here that this team's going to play a lot better football just because they're healthier. They have a more focused identity on offense at this point. They can run the ball, do whatever they want behind it with Nick Chubb, and maybe Jameis, maybe DTR, whoever they want to float in and out there. And then you also have the added advantage of knowing that this defense is playing much, much better. And that starts at the defensive line, right? Because I think Michael Hall has come in there and actually played some good minutes there for this team, giving them some good snaps. And I think that's made a world of difference. I think getting Quentin Jefferson off the field has made a world of difference there on the defensive line. And if you get better defensive play, you add that with being able to score more than 14 points, you're probably going to look a lot better. And that's not a hot take, because if you don't play better than this, you're going to finish as a 2-win team, which is ridiculous. I still think this team's going to find a way to get to at least 7 wins. So just the mathematics of that means that they're going to play much better down the stretch.
Yeah, I feel like even beyond Nick Chubb, I feel like we have seen some more glimmers of the rest of the run game. Against Philly, like a couple guys were really showing up then. And I don't think those guys are as consistent week to week as what you're going to get from Nick Chubb. But if they can, contribute here and there a little more, I think that's a positive part for the offense too.
Huge uptick in zone defensively, and they did it so much better last week. Like, that's probably the best zone defense we've seen from them. And I thought that was hugely encouraging as far